This is pretty amazing. Look at that. Whoa, baby. And sure enough, we found an incredible blue hull. Hi there, this is Captain Q. Join us as we travel hither and yon to show you some great deals on some really interesting boats and maybe learn just a little bit with each one. Hey Randy!
Captain!
Randy, come on around here. Hey, guess what? We have a winner of the Mystery Boat Contest.
Really?
It is Gregory Koyanaji. He was the first one to notice the rudder had this notch out of it, and he said, that's got to be a Grampian 26. Now I'm hoping that Gregory doesn't really live across the street. I don't know where he lives, but we're going to find out. He'll contact us and there will be merch. If Gregory would like to get in touch with us, we will get back to him and we will send him a coupon that will allow him to have the merch of his choice. That doesn't include the Jaguar. What we're standing here beneath is a boat devised in the early 70s by a company called Grampian. Back in the early 60s, a gentleman named Jim Bissiker was in construction up in Ontario, and he gathered two friends together, Dick Newman and John Byrne. And he said, you know, there's this thing going on right now where they're suddenly building boats out of fiberglass. Let's go figure out how to do that. So the three of them trucked on down to Warren, Rhode Island, to the Dyer Boat Company. Now, the Dyer Boat Company was started by William Dyer, using the design work of Philip Rhodes, who manufactured and designed a dinghy that was used on PT boats during World War II for search and rescue. The early ones were made out of wood. Later on, Dyer figured out fiberglass. He was one of the early folks in fiberglass technology. And he built these Dyer dinghies. They were very popular. So these three guys from Oakville, Ontario, went out down there, learned all about it, and came back to Oakville and established a company to build fiberglass boats. But they didn't have any designs or any particular boats of their own. So they went to see this fellow named Charles Angle in Rochester, New York, and he designs for two boats called a Triangle 20 and a Triangle 32. And they also hooked into a man named George O'Day. And George O'Day brought them other small sailing dinghies like an albacore and a snipe. So they had a lot of small boats that they were building. They found a Scotsman named Alex McGruer. He designed the captain's launch for the Queen's Yacht Britannia. He came and designed, guess?
Grampian 26? Wow.
He was given certain parameters. That'd be kind of a fast boat, and it had to be comfortable. And one of the key components to it was to give the boat headroom. And so this boat has 6-foot headroom, which is really unusual for a 25-foot boat. She's very solid. One of the recent reports I read about her stated that out of the 980 boats they built, there are almost no notes of any problems with the hull or the deck or anything. McGruer was a little bit ahead of his time in some ways, but he's got a nice classic spoon bow to this boat. And we're going to see more of this. I promise we will unwrap this in a minute.
Oh, we are? Wait, who's going to do the unwrapping?
Who else? She has a nice soft entry coming into the boat right here. Soft sections, and her bilges are not totally flat, but they are a little slack through the midsection. And one thing that we've seen with boats and learned about is discussing the buttocks of the boat, which is the flat sections back in here in the run. Somewhere starting around 1/3 or 25% from the stern of the boat, they start to flatten out. And you see, this is going to give the boat a good run off the wind and give her some good boat speed.
That reminds me of our friend Chuck Payne.
Yes, it does.
Right?
Chuck was very big on disturbances.
And watching the water molecule just kind of flow effortlessly, right?
Exactly. She is very clean under here. You're right, Chuck was very clear on that. There's no follow-on trailing skeg here for the rudder, but the keel is a nice design. She's a little longer than the fin keels that were being popularized at that point by Cal. So she's going to have a good tracking motion for it. There is no propeller shaft.
Ah.
That's why you don't see one. This notch out, and I'm not certain why he elected to do that. If anything, if he left it in, it would have given the boat a little bit more waterline length. They discussed the boat having a very light weather helm. In moderate airs, when it starts to blow up, the helm will increase like most boats, but nothing untoward. And she's semi-balanced. You see, here's the shaft coming down here, and here this part's counterbalancing the trailing edge. So it's going to be easy to hang on to the tiller up on deck. Now, you were asking about the propeller shaft. These boats could be had a number of ways. They can be had with this full keel, which is about 4 foot 3 inches, I think, of draft, or they could go to a 3 foot centerboard version with a stub keel, and then they could also have an inboard motor, gasoline or diesel, or, and I'm going to be interested to see it, there's I believe not a well, because I don't see a well here, but they had a way to bolt an outboard onto the stern of this. And this boat is presently sitting in Rummery's boat yard in Biddeford, Maine right now.
How long has she been on the hard?
She's been on the hard for about 7 years.
Ooh.
7 years.
Does that worry you at all? Like,
not now.
maybe when we unwrap it?
Wait till I unwrap it, then I might get worried. We may find beehives in there. Maybe we'll find some lost gold. I'm going to get out my snips, and we are going to address uncovering this puppy and see what we find. What do you think?
Yeah, let's go up and take off the Christmas wrapping.
Randy, come on up, buddy.
All right.
Now, we haven't had a gem this Jimmy in a long time. Now this whole boat, if you notice, the top sides has all been repainted recently, and they've also painted the whole deck on the boat. And the paint's pretty tight. Now it's probably a simple 1-part coating of paint. It really looks good. It's very serviceable, I think is the apt phrase for it. But one of the bigger cockpits we've seen so far, this is, quick cabin Q measurements. We're in 9 feet of cockpit here.
One thing I spotted on my way up the ladder here.
What was that? I know what you spotted.
What do you think?
The gold cove stripe.
Yeah, you got it.
Can you imagine a gold cove stripe on this puppy? I'm really, really amazed at this boat. Let's talk about some basics here. I'm sitting on a big hatch. I'm going to open this up. Look at that. Robin's egg blue, clean as a bell. The last owners put some hooks here to hang sheets and so forth on, so it's going to be a very tidy space. I'm suspecting there's no quarter berth, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now on the other side, we have a similar locker. Oh, it's got a little latch on it. That's nice. And with its own shelf. And isn't that swell?
Pretty sparkling.
A little wood keeper there to keep some things from rolling off the shelf. We like that a lot. Now, you are also standing in sort of a navigator's or a position to run the engine. Notice we have a big cutout in the transom. And there are grooves on either side here that somewhere on the boat we're going to find a gate that will close up in there and close this off. So this is nice, it's handy, it's easy to run the throttle and to shift the boat and still steer the boat with your tiller right here. I notice a pin on this tiller, so I'm suspecting maybe there is a autopilot tiller control somewhere on the boat. They didn't know what to do about motors back in those days, and to put a big engine in a boat this size was cost prohibitive. So the more they could put outboards in there, the better they were.
What is this piece here then? So you would maybe mount the outboard on the back of this?
I'm thinking that this might be an actual outboard mount place or a place to catch their boom sometime.
Okay.
I'm not certain. This did not come with the boat. There's a place here to put his bell. Here's a VHF antenna that's just mounted upside down right now, so it's out of the way for storage. And here's the connection for the VHF antenna. That would go right up here if this were inverted.
Yep.
And here's your main sheet tackle right here with a cam cleat on it. Here's the other end of it right here. So your main sheet, your boom's going to come back to here somewhere, and that's how you trim the sail. I'm going to show you how long this cockpit is. Now we got the Captain Q measuring stick here, and I'm just going to semi-recline. And now we got 6'1" here. How much room do I have beyond my feet?
Another half mile.
Some people have complained that there's no refrigerator in the galley or freezer or anything. But look at this.
Oh yeah.
You cannot believe how big that is. I bet you could put 400 pounds of ice in there. Now I'm just going to step in here for a minute.
Sounds like too much ice.
No, never have too much ice. No. Now I know you got into one of these things. I can almost get down into this one, but look how deep this is. This is that deep, and it's this wide. It's ginormous.
I think you're making ice cubes.
Now the first thing you're going to notice when you get on deck here, as opposed to any of the other boats we've seen, the walkways are very narrow. Instead of giving you a big, long, wide walkway, he gave you a big, fat cabin here. So I know when we go below, we're going to have lots of room below. And people don't use these a whole lot except to go forward and aft. And you still have suntan decking right here on top of the cabin. There's a forward hatch. The mast is stepped on deck. We'll see more about that. The boat comes with a spinnaker pole over here, which tells me there may be a spinnaker on board, or at the very worst, you'll have a pole to wing out your jib with. She's got a single lifeline and a nice sturdy stainless bow pulpit. There are running lights right here on either side of the bow, and it's just slightly aft, and you can see where the chain locker is right at the very bow. Now this deck has been painted all over. Up on the bow, you can see where it's kind of gotten burned off a little bit from the sun, but nothing to concern yourself about. As we walk down the side deck here, we come to the stanchions, and you'll see a little putty work or something's gone on around these, so I'm going to guess they've had a little leak. So you've got 1, 2, 3 chain plates, so the mast is going to be well stayed, both fore and aft and topside. And see how the lifeline is dropped? So it'll tack at the bow, and it'll run right along outside everything. This doesn't go inside on this boat because the boat's still quite narrow.
Tell me about the mast depth.
This is pretty amazing. A lot of this design, number one, is to carry the load of the mast. Instead of just putting one small piece, they've created an I-beam effect to sit on top of the deck, so that load's going to be carried probably between 2 bulkheads. I think when we get below, we'll find one bulkhead here and maybe another bulkhead ending here. Now, I think we should take a look below deck. What do you say?
Yeah, let's go check it out.
Randy.
Yeah.
Come on down, buddy.
All right.
I'm sitting on a 6-inch cushion, maybe almost 8 inches. They're huge, deep, soft cushions. The fabric on them has been used, and there's a little bit of mildew that just needs to be washed off a couple of them. But all in all, it's in great shape. So this is a perfect boat for a couple, maybe with 2 tiny children, 1 child, or maybe just a couple that wants to go out and have a good time sailing. She's not overdone down here with fixtures and this, that, and the other. And interestingly enough, there's not one drawer in the boat.
Huh.
I don't think I've ever quite seen that. You'll notice that we have a lot of storage right under your feet right now where an engine might have lived. So we don't have an engine to live with. She has a couple of electronics over there which are dated. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if they didn't turn on once you hooked them up to a battery. And, oh, what's above it there? Look at what they have there. These little devils, even 15 years ago, you could buy Dinnymore and go sailing. Now, also right beside Randy is a Seafair flashing depth sounder. And these are really kind of nice. They're old school. There's no numbers on them, but there's an illuminated dial around that big center dial. And it will tell you, say 9 o'clock might be 15 feet of depth. If it was flashing down at 6 o'clock on there, point to 6 o'clock there, Randy, then it would be probably 30 feet. And the neat thing about that is that you didn't have to know that it was 41 or 38 and a half, not that critical, but that tells you what the depth of the water is, and you can follow that on your chart. This table will drop down and give you a very generous double given the size of the boat. There is a quarter berth that you're actually kneeling in to take this picture. And there's no cushion in that right now, but I think if you reach down, you could pop your finger in one of those holes and you'll see just how clean this boat is. Look at that. Look at that. And there's storage underneath all these lockers, and they're all dry. Right there, you see a battery storage underneath the cockpit. That's where the motor would have lived. Look at the view you get. There's no porthole. A number of these boats have gone down the intercoastal waterway. And you know what's so swell about that? if you're below decks and you're motoring down the coastal waterway, the cook, whether it's him or her, can look out and see the world go by. It's really panoramic. And remember how the cabin house ate up a lot of the side decks? Aren't we glad that's happened? Because I can move right over here. I take the Captain Q frame. My shoulder is under the deck here. And another small person or, you know, a sweetie pie could come in and sit down right beside you, and you could have two more on the other side. Actually, that berth is just slightly, because of the beam of the boat, just slightly wider over there. And Sea Dog thinks it's pretty swell. The galley, simplicity itself. Randy's just discovered an extra workboard that's stored away there. That's good. And so you've got an extra workspace for it. Now, there's no stove sitting here now, and back then they would carry very simple, just a little 2-burner alcohol stove that would sit right up here. It wasn't designed to be cooked with at sea. Now, if you had a friend that happened to have a sea swing stove,
Oh yeah.
you could mount that puppy right there, and you could cook all the meals you want to and make your crew very happy. This is a hand pump for the fresh water. That's all there is, and they were nice enough to leave a bottle there for the next owner. There's some deep shelves here, not slider shelves like we're used to seeing, but some pretty deep shelves, more storage, and a direct drain from the sink. Here's a list of stickers for this boat. For the state registration, excise tax has been paid. It's kind of a cute little thing there. We thought there might be a bulkhead under that mast step, but we are seeing a bulkhead. This guy right here is supporting this massive beam. This is quite a large beam. It must be that's like a 4x4 beam right up here. I'm not seeing any deflection here. You can also see the chain plates, which are great. And there's been some leakage here, but that's still very solid. Don't we like libraries on boats? And this is very important for people who have figured out how to run the depth sounder. This is a good rule to stand by. Do you think that makes sense? We talked about the height in this boat. It says 6 feet, and I've got my hat on here. I'm going to take my hat off for a split second. There's 6'1". I'm just touching it with shoes on. That was one of the criteria to build this boat in the first place, and to be able to go fast. She's got about a 21-foot water line right in there with a Cal 25. She's a little heavier than a Cal 25. You compare the two boats, but she carries about 40 more square feet of sail area.
Oh,
so
nice.
we've got little hurricane lamps here. This one's missing the dome for it, but you fill up a little kerosene and it'll throw some nice light in the cabin. Now coming forward, this boat's been sitting, so we got a little mildew on the head, but everything else around it is good. This 2 seconds, I'll have that cleaned up with, if you had a good product like undoes it. Here is your evacuation line. This piece up here is called an anti-siphon. If you pump this over the side and went right down to the water and was full, it would try to pull water right out of the ocean up there. This puts a little air block in there that lets the air into this tube and causes the suction to fail. I'm up in the forepeak.
What's on the other side here?
Oh, right here you have a classic hanging locker.
Huh.
I'm now in my own private cabin. Who's there?
Crew?
Okay, come in. We're going to do a little ballet here for you. Whoa, baby, whoa. Oh, yes, sir. This is the most comfortable mattress we've seen on a boat yet, I think. And I do have light up here, so there is some lighting in this boat someplace. We just have to figure it out. I've got a reading light here beside me, port light here on each side. This big hatch. I think you could just let me curl up here. I'll be happy for a bit. Would that be okay with you?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Oh, thank you,
Have
pal.
a nice siesta.
I'm going to do that. I always like this part of our episode. Good night.
Night.
We looked at a boat today. We had no idea what was under the shrink wrap. We knew that the boat had been purchased 15 years ago and had really been sitting on the hard for 7 years. When I found out they'd made over almost 1,000 of these 26-foot Grampian sloops out of fiberglass up in Oakville, Ontario, I said, we got to take a look at it. Let's see what it's all about. And sure enough, we found an incredible blue hull. Grampian had been, and Alex McGrewer had been given the rules to go out and build a boat with 6-foot headroom, lots of comfort, and still be speedy around a race course. And he did that. Now, She's a little lumpy looking on the side because you got to give up something. You don't get headroom for free. So he gave it a little extra headroom, a little more beam. The interior of the cabin is voluminous. The past owner put, I don't know, 6, 8-inch cushions in there. It was so comfortable I didn't want to leave. It was really great. And one of the nicer things about it was it just took an outboard motor to make it go. There is a mast and there's a boom and there's a spinnaker pole on board, which gives me possible thought that there might be a spinnaker that goes with this boat. And her keel and bottom design were far in advance of what else was coming out in those days. Rating time. So we're going to give it a 10 because I know that's going to float like a rocket. If we were rating this boat against other boats of her age, I'd got to go on another 10. I'm giving this one a 20. 20 for the Grampian 26, 1970s version, fiberglass hull, built in Canada. If you like what you see, please hit the subscribe button. And if you want to be notified when the next one comes out, please hit the alert bell. And that's not desperate at all. We're having too good a time doing these things, so you're going to hit the bell or not. Randy, how would I ever find out what's coming up next?
You can follow us on Instagram here,
Yeah.
or Facebook here. We'll have little previews of what's coming up on our next episodes a little bit early.
That's pretty cool. Previews. You all join me. I'm going to Instagram right now, and I'm going to find out what's coming up next week. Thank you very much.
You know, Instagram's not a place.